Welcome to the next episode of More to Me. I'm your host, Kanchana Banerjee, and this is where I'm in conversation with people who have pivoted from conventional professions, careers to follow their passion. Today's guest is Lalita Ravindran, and after 31 years of corporate stint with companies in the finance and technology background, companies like Cognizant, Larsen and Toubro, etc., Lalita has now become a literary agent. Yes, you heard me right. She has become a literary agent and has over 70 authors with her as her clients. And she runs an agency called The First Forays. Welcome, Lalita, to the series More to Me.
Thank you so much, Kanchana, for inviting me for this talk or a conversation.
Yeah. So,
It
Lalita,
sounds so
you.
crazy when I hear you say what you did just now. It feels, who are they talking about?
That's nice. So, your journey is a beautiful example of of finding your passion or finding your inner calling through curiosity, reflection, and exploration. As your background suggests, for 31 years you were far, far away from the literary world. Though I know that you were a voracious reader, but you were far away from anything to do with books and authors and etc. So, how is it that after 31 years of such serious corporate work that you thought and decided to become a literary agent?
I think of myself as karma's child because nothing has been planned. Even the original career that I had was not what I exactly wanted. But being from a very traditional Tamil Tambram family, though my father educated me and made me an MBA in finance, he wasn't very keen in seeing me go to work. He was like, women of our family don't need to work. I was like, why did you bother educating me? If all I had to do was cook for some man somewhere who I don't know. And so finally, I had to take what came my way and what was acceptable to him at that time. And so that also wasn't very planned. And then, 2000 happened and new sunrise industry, people were knocking on the doors of people like me with a domain knowledge. And even though I didn't have any technical knowledge in the sense, but my business knowledge was what they were going after. And that's how, after resisting it for 2 or 3 years, because I was a fairly senior in the insurance industry, and I thought if I didn't get into any trouble, I could reach the very top. But then my father died and my mother died. And then I remembered what my father said. He said, opportunity knocks only once. And when these knocks were coming in from these IT industries, 98, 99, they were all scouting for people they know. Finally, I took the bait, I guess, in 2000, and that's how I, in a stroke of madness, jumped into technology. And from a blue eyed girl, I became a babe in the woods. And then, I lasted there for about 15 odd years. And then I had enough of that as well. I loved my job, I loved what I did, but there was too much of things that I had to deal with on the outside that I didn't have uh, the motivation to do that anymore. My daughter was married off, her education was over, and I was like, why do I need to do this? Yeah, that's very important. I tell you this
Huh,
because now I quit my job on a whim, like
huh,
this on a Tuesday morning. I went to work and I said, I hereby resign with no plan to do
hmm,
anything. And I
hmm,
was pretty young at that time, young as in relatively young.
hmm.
And I had no clue what to do. So I was a vagabond, wanderer, traveler, and I thought I'm going to die of boredom.
Hmm.
2015-16, I had come back from the US. I didn't recognize the town, city now that I was staying in. I had no friends. I had nobody.
You were living in
Uh,
Chennai at that time or Bangalore?
no, Pune,
Pune. Acha, okay. And you're still
Pune,
Pune
Pune.
based, right?
I am still in, yeah.
Okay, yeah. Hmm.
So from Bombay, I moved to Pune, and this has been my base, even though I traveled and
Huh.
stayed elsewhere. And so I was totally bored, and I didn't know what to do with my time. How long can you go shopping to the malls? I was watching movies for, hours together. My calendar was filled with what to see on the television, what to see where. But I realized that there were book clubs in the city.
Yes.
And there was a literary festival that I discovered via Facebook. And so I went there. I had a purpose for 3 days, Friday, Saturday, and
Is
Sunday. I
that the
went with
Pune
my
Lit
bag.
Fest? Is that the Pune Lit Fest?
Yes,
Yes, of
yes. And that
Manjari
happens
Prabhu.
to be, that's right. So
Yeah.
that's, I felt I had a purpose there just to go and sit down and see what's going on. What's this hoopla about? What is a literary festival?
Huh.
And there I met an author.
Huh.
He was sitting in front of me and he was on a panel on crime. And then we started talking. You talk to strangers in these festivals. And we started talking. He told me he's an author and all that. And then after he finished his session, he said, because I had got up and asked some silly question, he said, you must be in touch with me. You must buy my book. I said, sure, I'll buy your book. And then one thing led to another, and he was following up a lot till I read the book. I asked him questions. I wrote a review, and I thought, now I'm rid of this guy. I've done everything. I've bought it. I've read it. I've reviewed
Do you mind
it.
revealing the name of the person?
Yes, yes. He is Braham Singh. He wrote the book Bombay Swastika. And he had done a lot of research on that book. It was set on the underbelly of Bombay, and it went back to a German Jew and all that. It's a very complicated read. And then, after thanking me for doing all this, he said, will you read other people's reviews? I said, whatever for? I've done this thing for, just a stranger. I didn't know him from Adam. I didn't know anything. I said, I don't need to read I don't really care what other people think of your book. This is what I told him. But he said, but I had also told him that I might soon die of boredom because I'm doing nothing. So he kept on saying, if you have nothing better to do, why don't you read it? Why don't you read other people's reviews? So I said, okay, sure, give it to me. And they said, this book will not sell. This only Chetan Bhagat sells in India. Your English is too complicated. There are 26 characters. And this won't do in India. It's not meant for the Indian reader. So then he asked me, what do you think of that? I said, they are pretty correct. So then so I gave him some tips, not knowing what I was saying. I said, man, your genre is wrong. I told him first. I said, your genre should not have been crime thriller. It should have been historical fiction, because from what I've understood, 80% is actually non-fiction. He said, you're the only one who have understood that. Not even my publishers have asked me whether how much of it is reality. I said, I could figure out a lot of things from this. It also reads a little bit like a non-fiction book, but I can see that you have tried to make this into a fiction book. So he said, okay, now what do? I said, you are barking up the wrong tree in terms of the readership. You should be going to historical fiction readers or non-fiction readers. They might also enjoy it because it's a challenging read. That is when he said, this kind of advice I have not got from anybody, and it has taken me 4 years to publish this. You just come in and you tell me this. You should become a literary agent. So that was his, and I was resisting. I said, what is a literary agent? This country is full of agents. I don't want to be another agent.
Yeah.
And I said, I really don't know anything. I'm just saying it for a lark. I don't know whether it makes sense or not. He said, no, it's making a lot of sense. So then he said, what do I need to do then now? I said, you need to promote it properly. You're promoting, your segment is a little bit wrong. And the way you're pitching the story is also wrong. And he said, why don't you help me do that? Again, stating that if you don't have anything better to do. So I said, okay, let me do something, but don't ask me what I'll do, because I have no clue how to go about doing this. I've never done this. I don't know how the whole thing works. And while I was a younger person and working, I did not know about book clubs and readership groups. It was more a casual, unstructured thing, or you went to the
Yeah.
library, things like that within your group. So that's how he kept on saying. Even then, I was resisting. And then there was a small festival in the city where I got to interview Braham and Shirish and introduce a couple of other budding authors on the stage. Then these two authors started introducing me to everybody as she is my literary agent.
How interesting. It's really wonderful how sometimes, you land up where you didn't think you would go, through, a series of sometimes unconnected, disjointed events. They land you up there. And I'm sure, after a while, you must have felt, oh my God, this is exactly what I wanted to do.
And I really don't know. I think, as they say, that if you put it out in the universe, something will happen.
Yeah.
I guess it was that. And so before I knew it, somebody had designed my website. I said, what will I even write on my website? I mean, there's nothing I can say that will convince a budding author to come to me. And even how do I approach somebody? Because they're going to ask me how many books, who are your authors, what do you know, how does this industry work? I had no clue at all. I made mistakes. I asked people. Then people, I became a good listener then. I realized there was nothing much for me to say. So I started listening and I started attending a lot of these events, book events, book readings, book club events. And I was seeing what are the readers looking for? How are they analyzing this book? How are they comparing it with others? And things like that.
And how did you build your connections with the publishing houses?
That was very difficult, not an easy thing to do. So on day one, I took out everybody's email and then I wrote an introductory email to them. I am Lalita Ravindran and I'm a new literary agent of the block, and I would like to work with you. I did not get a single response. I thought like an insurance agent. I come from the insurance industry. An insurance agent is a very important outlet to reach the market. For any other agent, if you see, a Tupperware distributor or any of these people, they are sort of engaged by the company that they're working for. But with publishing, nobody cared to reply. Nobody replied. So I was like, I don't know what's happening. But emails were coming in and I was looking at it and I would get excited by the kind of stories. Because in the 20th century, we read all foreign authors, and this year they were all like Indian authors writing stories that were set in our own backyards, told in the way that we narrate stories, things that were not being said, and more of commercial fiction, some kind of non-fiction, some kind of historicals and things like that. So I said, would I want to read something like this? And then I said, of course, I want to read this. And then I didn't even know how to submit it to a publisher. I would read up their website. I would spend a week in creating that proposal. Because I thought everything for us from the corporate world, the proposal has to have everything and the weight of that. But I don't think they really mattered so much eventually. So that's how I started. Very, very slowly, the first 2 years. Then 2019, I became a grandmother. So I became more focused on my daughter and my grandson. And so I was away for a while. And then when I came back, the pandemic happened. And so all of us were rooted to our screens. And then it was pouring and pouring and pouring. Though it was a very difficult time for publishing. There were quite a few publishers who were closed down. Many were going very slow. There were a lot of changes that were happening. But I kept busy. And while I did not get the very big deals and things like that, I could get them published somehow or the other. traditionally or whatever way. And I guess I was making sense to the writers who came to me.
Of
Because they would
course.
say, thank you very much for this advice, and I will do this. And I sometimes I used to feel, am I even entitled to give them this feedback?
Hmm.
But I looked at my job as a reader. Like,
Of
will I
course.
spend 200 or 300
Yeah.
rupees to. I didn't care about who published it because
Hmm.
I had been reading for decades. I did not know who were the publisher. And even if I knew it, I didn't know what it meant.
So tell me, what was the reaction of, say, like your older colleagues, your earlier colleagues, your family, your friends, when they found out that, after so many years of a very different corporate stint, you have become a literary agent and you're dabbling with authors and getting their books published?
I think they were totally stunned. They thought either I've gone mad, or she doesn't know what she's doing, or maybe she has some severe, serious financial problems that she's just doing anything. And
Huh.
then I had to tell them, man, I'm spending money on this.
Huh.
I'm spending money on my travel. I'm spending money on my website. I'm making no money.
Hmm.
Initially it was all royalty commission. And first 2 years, any case, there was no
Hmm.
money. And so they were very confused. Even today I tell them, at least by heart this term called literary agent.
Hmm.
They introduce me as, she's a publisher, she does something with books, she's an editor,
Uh,
things like that. So what is a literary agent to them?
huh.
They don't know what it is, and they really don't care. Uh, so it's, as far as they are concerned, they still, I don't think most of my friends really know what exactly I do.
This journey in the beginning, it was not an easy journey. There were a lot of, there were a lot of obstacles, there were a lot of hurdles, and you had to spend your own money, and the publishers were not responding, and and you were getting these kind of emails from the authors. So what is it that made you stick? That what is it that made you stick with this? And of course, like this guy, he was after you, that you're dying of boredom, so do something. But then beyond that, what made
They
you
were
stick?
little wins, they were little wins. So for 3 losses, I had a small little win. Or somebody would come and say, your feedback really helped me.
Mm,
And things like that. And then I got featured in, Chetan Mahajan called me once and he said, Iyer, you're an agent. And then he told me, you seem to be a different type of agent. I said, how do these people know about me? Because I had a half-baked website. Even that website was not
mm,
very, very strong, I feel, even now.
mm.
And so, uh, and the pandemic, the 2 years that we had
Huh,
lockdown,
huh.
you had nothing better to do than to cook, eat,
Mm,
and do something. So
mm,
then these emails, a lot of them started coming in, and very interesting stories. Many of them memoirs, many of them very nice
mm.
historicals, that I find I'm leaning a lot towards
Yeah.
that. And so just kept on doing it. And slowly, for 2 or 3 not so great ends, there would be one good end. And
Mm,
so that would sort of energize me. That would sort of energize me. And secondly, I guess I had nothing else to do.
mm,
And once it was 22, and the things started going back to to normal, and I started
mm.
visiting festivals, I found many people say, oh, you are Lalita. And I was like, yes. So, and they're like, we wanted to meet you. And
So, I'll tell you,
so
I
that
mean,
was
given the kind of
strange.
experience most authors have with literary agents, the good literary agents, they are very standoffish. They are not approachable. So I guess, what really warmed up people, with you is that you're very approachable. You have a very calm and a soothing, kind of a demeanor. You listen well. So, that is half the battle won, because, and I can talk from an author's point of view, that the authors, they just want someone who will listen to them and give them good advice. Even if they don't sign you on, they will give you some good advice which can help help them in their book journey or writing of the book. But usually most agents are the good ones. I mean, the good ones, as in the good productive ones. They just kind of, blow you away. So
Yeah.
I guess that is what really kind of warmed up people to you.
Because I that was a very conscious effort. It's
Huh.
not really my personality. In all my job, I've been told that, I'm not very open and things like that. I didn't really care much for it. And in, I think the way I'm made, I'm a little bit shy. If I have
Huh.
nothing to say, I don't say anything.
Hmm.
This is what my father also said when I was a teenager, that she doesn't speak unless she has something to say. And I said, isn't that the purpose of speaking? How can you speak when you have nothing to say?
Huh.
So I've always been like that. And then in this business, I realized that one has to be a little more, because I started thinking from the view of the author who now approaches an agent.
Huh.
They have written something. Now they need an agent to guide them, to take them to the publishing cycle. And I felt how terrible they must have felt, while reaching out to a stranger and
Hmm.
then hearing, get the feedback from them.
Hmm.
So as far as possible, I try to be compassionate, because people can write only what they can write.
Yeah.
And also they are artists. I found that most writers are very sensitive people. And so I said, this is the space I really want to be. So I do call myself a friend, philosopher, guide. Sometimes I'm also that elderly teacher who will knock you on your knuckles and say, behave.
So my next question to you is that, do you wish you had done this earlier? That
No,
Do you wish you hadn't, waited for 31 years to finish your corporate stint and then do this?
no.
No?
I don't think I would have been an utter failure in my young age, because
Um,
I had, this publishing is a very slow pace. Things don't happen month on month, week on
yeah.
week. It's very slow. And even after you sign, you wait for 1.5 years, and then, it's very slow. Whereas as a young person, I was very much like almost all young people.
Yeah.
I was in a hurry. I wanted to climb the corporate ladder. I
Hmm.
very much wanted to be in the corporate world. There weren't that many role models then in the 80s.
Hmm.
And especially in the small towns that I
Yeah.
came from, there was hardly anyone who was a role model. At best, there would be a teacher or a nurse.
Hmm.
And so in the corporate world, it was, so I just wanted to have wings and fly and do things.
Absolutely.
So
So my last question is that, you kind of stumbled upon a wonderful profession, a wonderful thing that gives you so much of joy, not out of plan, but it just happened to you. And then out of curiosity and exploration, it led up to you. So, what would be your advice to people who don't really have a passion or an inner calling, but want to do something? What would be your advice be to them?
I would say go out in places that you don't normally go to.
Hmm.
uh, do make small conversations. You never know who's a messenger there with a message for you, like Graham
Yeah.
Singh happened to be for me.
Yeah.
I think, and do try different things, without putting a pressure of a major goal of money or some kind of an achievement. I didn't
Hmm.
have any of those things, so I was much more relaxed. I
Yeah.
didn't care whether I made money in the beginning or not. So I think one should, and I feel that, especially like now I'm like post-retired age kind of a stage, and I feel that you are never really retired till you leave this world.
Yeah.
And if you don't do anything outside of yourself, I feel then there is a certain early depth and not a very good one.
Hmm.
And then you might surprise yourself that you could do so many things. Like I have
Of
surprised
course.
myself
Of course.
doing something, and that really does a great deal for your self esteem.
Hmm.
Because this is entirely, see, we are not doing any publicity for ourselves. We're not, if you look at my social media, you won't see any great engagement or numbers or anything there. But still, word goes around.
Yeah.
And not because you tried hard, because you also did not know how to behave. You just thought, let me be empathetic, that somebody has reached out, somebody has put in so many years of work, and I cannot trash it or just say, uh, you know, I mean, I do have to say no quite often, but then I try to give them a reason why
Yeah.
it's more of a thing.
Mm.
So I think everybody should go ahead and do it. I see the women doing a lot of this more than the men.
Yes.
The men will
Yes.
remain in their industry with their old
Uh-huh.
friends and old colleagues, but with the women I'm seeing, they become designers or whatever, catering
They
and all
move
that.
away from
I
their, yeah, they move away from their,
I think yes, as a form of your own wellness, to keep
mm,
yourself balanced and in good health, and to be a good human, generally. I mean, that's more altruistic. I'm not looking, let me be a good human.
no, I
But
understand where you're coming from, that,
but so when I'm
yeah.
satisfied,
Mm,
with myself, I am a better person, I feel.
absolutely. Great.
And that doesn't come with just taking care of your home and cooking for the
Yeah.
family, because you've
Yeah.
already done it for 40 years and
Exactly.
more. And
Exactly.
so
True.
I think people should try new things, be open to ideas,
Mm.
and take that step. Never mind failures.
Doesn't
failures
matter.
assured.
Yeah.
Failures
True.
assured.
True.
So
And
pick
as
up,
you right,
pick
as
up
you
and do
rightly
something.
said, that one should just, open their wings and just fly out and experience new things. So, with that, we come to the end of today's session. And I think, Lalita is leaving us with a very valuable message and lesson, that just spread your wings and fly to unknown territories and experience things that you've never tried before, and the universe will surprise you. So because I believe, and this is a fact, that there is more to us than the labels that we stick on us, and that the boxes that we live in. There is so much more to us than that. So thanks, Lalita. Thank you so much for sharing your journey, and best of luck to First Forays and to you. And I hope you go to great heights.
Thank you so much, Kanchana, for this very interesting conversation.